Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror Hangout episode. Once again, we have gathered in the middle of the week for an extra episode by which we all draw strength from one another and talk about a film that is not on the main line of our show because we're in the middle of our Edgar Allan Poe retrospective right now. We are going to be discussing The Vast of Night, which is a film that Tony Salvaggio has been wanting us to watch ever since he saw us at saw it at the Fantastic Fest. It is a 2019 film. Okay, who do we have tonight? With us tonight from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, writer of the long-running underground comic series Halloween Man, Mr. Drew Edwards. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello, Julia.
Not as always. I usually don't come to these hangouts, so this is special for me.
Well, that's true. That's very, very true. Yeah. So we're happy to have you in the middle of the week, but this was a fun one. Okay. So Vast of Night. Here's what I'll say, and then I'd like Tony to kind of set it up for us, and then everybody could give their opening thoughts, and then we don't have to be all that organized. Vast of Night, 2019 American science fiction film directed by Andrew Patterson. It's called a micro-budget film. It's made for, I think, something like $700,000. It stars Sierra McCormick and Jake Horowitz, and it was written under the pseudonym James Montague, premiered at Slam Dance in 2019. Amazon has picked it up and released it just a few days ago in drive-in theaters, which is really cool, and on Prime Video. And Tony,
I wish I could have seen it drive-in. That's awesome.
I would love to see it at drive-in. I mean, so Tony, this is a really, really neat film. But explain to me, like, what is The Vast of Night, and why is it cool, and why did you want us to see it?
So you know, there's a bunch of movies. I end up at Fantastic Fest seeing about 40 movies. At least 30, often 40. So a lot of things you kind of look at, you know, there's just a picture and a description, and you go, oh, well, I have this slot open. I kind of want to see it. And immediately fell in love with this movie. I love Twilight Zone. I love Outer Limits. I grew up in a really remote area. I lived in Mississippi, and when I wasn't there, I was living in a decently remote. Hearn isn't really super remote, but it's small town enough. And, you know, my grandfather, I would, you know, be out on his farm. He had a cotton field, and he had a farm out in Hearn. And so that kind of small town feel, along with sci-fi, along with the Twilight Zone, there's like a Twilight Zone style intro. There's a lot of audio nerdery. I grew up around a couple of radio stations, and I had a friend who worked at a radio station. So all these things, this is a laser focus for me. I don't know if you guys will feel the same way, but it's done on such a tight budget, but it does everything it's supposed to do extremely well. If you're a fan of Twilight Zone, of Outer Limits, of X-Files, of you know, kind of small town figuring things out, it's got all of that. You know, our friend Max, who's been on here, I felt this way, but he really nailed it. It also nails the dialogue, and the delivery of the dialogue fits the time period so well, and how small town people interact with each other. Along with the period dialogue and how radio was and all of that. And for them to nail so many different pieces of it under this budget and to have it be compelling the whole way through is really something. I don't want to overhype it, but I really feel strongly about this movie.
That's really wonderful. Julia, we watched this last night. I mean, what did you think?
It was interesting. It takes place in 1958, apparently, and supposedly in New Mexico, but the accents were very Southern, very Texan, or I don't know they weren't New Mexican per se.
Well, it was shot, for what it's worth, it's shot in Whitney, which is about 14 miles west of Hillsboro, which is like about 10 miles from Carl's Corner, or I guess about an hour from Dallas.
Yeah. So, right. But I'm just saying that that they're supposed to be shot. It's supposed to take place in New Mexico, but those are not New Mexican accents. But yeah, it was really interesting. I was definitely like very suspenseful. I was definitely wondering what the heck was going on the whole time, and I did yell at the screen a few times, especially because the girl kept leaving her post at the switchboard, and I was like, "Who the hell's running the switchboard?" But I
With
guess
you on that.
I
It
guess
is
somebody-
anxiety inducing, but it's part of
Yeah.
the.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Everyone was at
you
the
know
football game.
what?
Everyone was at the football game.
Oh, that's
Yes.
true. That's true. There weren't a lot of people making phone calls,
Right,
except for all the people who kept
exactly.
seeing the spaceship in the sky. And then I love that the radio station call letters are WOTW for War of the Worlds.
Mhm.
But anyway, so yeah, nobody
Mhm.
was definitely entertaining, and yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it some more.
That girl's from North Carolina, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't it. I was like,
Because
that.
she
I
has
don't know
that
what
sort
accent
of
that is exactly.
just really lush, low drawl all the time, and it's really lovely. Drew, what were your thoughts?
Well, when Tony first brought up doing this, I was actually initially very excited. And then I went. I shouldn't have pre-gamed it, because then I went and I got online and I started kind of reading descriptions of the movie, which described it as a mumblecore alien invasion movie. And I hate most movies that are described as quote unquote mumblecore.
I'm too old to even know what a mumblecore movie is.
It's like kind of a dialogue heavy. I get why they're calling this that. It's kind of a dialogue heavy thing where people quote unquote mumble a lot. So when I started to actually watch it, I was actually completely surprised at how not, even though I understand why people are making that analogy, I think that's a lazy thing to say, in my opinion, because first of all, no one mumbles in this movie. Everybody says their dialogue very clearly and concisely, and the dialogue is beautiful and the characters are charming. And even though this is very much about life in the 1950s, there's also this timelessness about it, and I just love spending time with these two characters. But I would actually call it more of a naturalist or a naturalistic alien invasion movie, whereas if somebody were to look at one of those alien invasion movies from the 50s and go, okay, what was happening outside of the main action? Like, what if we weren't paying attention to like the soldiers or the scientists who are usually the heroes in those movies, and what's actually going on in this town, and focused on these two particular characters? And I just loved it. I loved the business of walking around the town at night. Like, really took me back to when I was a teenager. And there's a thing about small towns is that you can just kind of roam around at night and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's not like being in a city, where you're not it's not necessarily a safe thing to do. You can really just do that. And I found these two characters that we spend most of our time with. I was just so completely invested with this. The other thing that I would say about this movie is it's incredibly intricate. Like, there's so many working parts of it that I actually went back and I watched it again after watching it the first time, because I feel like the first time I was just so focused on watching the two characters interact with each other, I barely paid attention to any of the alien stuff, and I had to go watch it again to kind of get my mind around how all of that worked. And I think this is definitely a movie that it welcomes repeat viewings, and I think this director is going to have a very long career because the fact that he pulled this movie off on such a low budget.
What I can't figure out is what I grapple with this, and thank you very much, Drew. I grapple with the significance of the budget, and the reason I say that is it's so beautiful. I don't even have to go, it's so beautiful for what it is, or it's so beautiful for a low budget movie. It's beautiful. This is a great job. I mean, it looks like, and the reason I say that is it looks like my favorite episodes of The X-Files. The X-Files always has two styles. The ones where they're hanging around in a big city, usually Washington, D.C., and the ones where they're hanging around in a little town. And this looks like one of those, and it is rock solid perfect. And one thing nobody ever said about The X-Files is, looks great for a TV budget. It just looks great. And
I think when you have a feature film, though, there's a difference of expectation, and usually
yeah, that's true. But like if you have Diner, right, and Paul Reiser and Mickey Rourke are hanging out in a diner and talking about chicks that they're chasing after, nobody cares, and they're like, boy, it's in a diner, which so the budget isn't that.
Don't have to pull off a giant UFO at the end of it.
This is true. No, super good point. I'm just saying that for that the story that it is requires exactly what we see, so we get what the story needs, and it works. Anyway, but to go back, what I really loved was go ahead, Tony.
I just find it funny. I will go. Drew goes, "Oh, it was jaded at first," and I'm like, "Drew, when have I steered you wrong?"
It had nothing to do with what you said. Nothing to do with what you said. It had everything to do with stuff that I was reading about it.
I mean, seriously, what the hell is the matter with people?
What I'm saying is, don't do that.
Right?
Trust me, man.
Yeah, trust Tony.
That's cool.
I mean, seriously, what is the matter with people that they'll watch something and go, I don't know, I saw this Titanic, and all the while I'm thinking everybody knows the thing's going to sink, so like, what's the point? Like,
no one was saying anything negative about it. I have to say that there weren't negative reviews, but they were comparing it to movies I don't like.
All right, how about fair enough? Yeah. So, but what I dig about this thing, I didn't even know what it was. I didn't even know if it was horror or science fiction or I didn't know anything. I knew Tony said watch a thing called Vast of Night, and so I said, okay, it's on Primes, and that's what we're watching. So it just started the way that I did with Pitch Black. I walked into Pitch Black, and by walked in, I mean I was already sitting there, but it started. And I was like, I don't even know what Pitch Black is. It could be a horror movie, but it was,
no one did at the time.
Right.
I mean, we saw that before anybody. I think almost everybody had seen it.
I know.
That was perfect, by the way.
It was mind-blowing. I was like, what the hell is this movie? It opens with that. They enter the atmosphere and the ship falls apart. It's great. Anyway, this... It opens with Jesus. I haven't seen such great stuff since like American Graffiti and all those movies where you just move around a little town and everybody knows one another and they're talking. I felt like it was a master class and getting to meet like 30 people and including your two main people, just meeting them as they walk around and Josh with oldsters and kids and everybody in between. You know, we meet our sort of delightful two main characters. Faye and what's the boy's name? It's Everett. We meet Faye and Everett, and everybody loves them. The movie doesn't give us. By the way, they don't have any arc. You know, it's not like Faye and Everett are going to change. They're just they're exactly who we meet. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going on too long. I apologize. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought this one was one of the best things I've ever seen. I really loved this. So, where do we start?
I like though that what the reality is, just so everybody knows, because again, I try not to overhype this, but when I saw that it was on Amazon Prime, it wasn't like, hey, Jason and Drew, you should go see this. The reality was me jumping up and down on my chair and going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Everyone can see this movie now. Holy crap, everybody can see this movie. And because it's not even behind a paywall of Shudder, it's like more people are likely to have Prime.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I love, and that's just how it is. So the fact that even more people can see this movie that hits all of these buttons was, somebody said, oh, it's on Prime now, and I almost jumped out of my seat.
No, yeah. You let us know immediately, and we all watched it like within 48 hours of you saying that. So that was probably the fastest that we've gone from recommendation to doing a show.
Because I've been waiting since September. So
I wondered, Tony, if any of what we were seeing. There's a lot of times when they do funny director tricks where we'll like leave one spot in the town and move clear across town. And I wondered at first if it was all CG, if this was a fake town. But it's Whitney, Texas. So, I mean, I think a lot of it's real. But how are these, forgive me, this might be the dumbest question anybody could ask, but how are these tricks done? How do you, like, have this camera move, like, from up in the stands to across the town?
I mean, I think it's a combo of some CG, some really smart camera work, and cuts that don't feel like cuts. Because I was watching more for some of the cuts, and what's amazing too and very interesting is the style of it is not something that's done very often.
Because what do you mean by that?
Like a Twilight Zone episode. Well, first it starts.
The frame story. I totally forgot. There's a frame story.
Well, I didn't actually care for that. I didn't actually like that it opens with, "Oh, we're watching this on a TV." I just thought that was kind of extra.
Right. No, I get that, and I could see. I mean, that's a valid point. Some people are going to like that and some people aren't. And I totally get, like, that makes total sense. But it brings it back through that several times. Also, it's not afraid to, since it is a very dialogue heavy movie, to drop the visuals altogether, both as a point of this is what's happening in the movie, and just as a thing of, I want to do that because I want to make it clear as a director, I've decided that I want to make the dialogue the most important thing right now.
Yes.
To get away with that and still have you enthralled when it pretty much, it's funny that it takes place on the radio. I mean, it's very deliberate, right? But at points it becomes a radio play straight up.
Yeah.
Because they'll drop all of the visuals.
Because our two main characters,
a little bit of the And
well, I mean, our two main characters, one is a DJ and one is a switchboard operator. So their jobs are to sort of let go of their eyes and just listen to what people are saying to them on a line. And so that gives us an excuse occasionally to do the same thing. So like,
really, if they hadn't wanted to do the to show us the ship at the end, you wouldn't have needed any visuals, honestly, because you're right. It starts out with the switchboard operator is listening to her, I guess her boyfriend, on the radio, and
they're friends. But whatever
he is, she hears a strange sound, and then also she's getting all these weird calls and I think she hears the sound again. I don't know. But anyway, so then she tells him that she heard the sound over the broadcast, and so he plays it back, the recording, and sure enough, there it is. And she's like, it's so weird, and it's really good. They did a great job mixing that sound. It's like a whole bunch of different things that they mixed together to get it. And then she she keeps getting calls and they keep dropping, and people are getting more and more freaked out and saying that, and also he plays it back over the radio and says if anybody knows anything about this, and he gets a call. So it's really interesting. But the whole addition of the switchboard thing is fascinating, because if it's a radio station call, she still gets it. It has to put it through to him.
It has to put it through to him, right? Yeah. Oh, it's so fat. I loved, by the way, watching this girl work the switchboard. I mean, I presume that this unfortunate actress, Sierra McCormick, had to learn how to use a switchboard, at least to
fake it.
Because I, Tony and Drew, I got to admit, I can't understand how it works. I mean, it seems so strange to because she knows exactly what each of those wires does when she unplugs it from one and plugs it into the other.
Well, I mean, this is now archaic technology too. Like, why would you understand?
No, for real. But it's a user interface, right? She's looking and so she knows what it's saying, what that board in front of her is saying to her at any given time, like what each of those wires is for. So it's interesting. She probably had to learn to use it, which I just love. I love the idea that they were like, all right, Sierra, we're going to show you how to be a switchboard operator circa 1959.
My grandmother did that.
Oh, really?
In fact, I think she had to get she had shoulder problems from doing that, from the way that you're hunched and doing stuff. Like at one point, I think she had to use insurance to fix things. But yeah, she was, and that's also where you get the trope of you can listen in, you shouldn't listen in, but where switchboard operators knew the town.
Yeah.
Because, you would often have in a slightly larger town, you would probably have at least 2 or 3 people. In fact, on busy nights, there probably are 2 or 3 people in there.
Yeah.
There's there's an extra chair, you see, or extra space.
Yeah.
So, the switchboard operator of the time that's a hub, the way the post office is, and how everybody in the post office knows everything, because everybody has to come to the post office or the bank. Those 3 things in a small town where all the commerce, the higher, I guess the base level commerce happened. Everybody had to go through the switchboard. Everybody had to go to the bank, and everybody has to go, to the post office.
Isn't that interesting?
And
when nothing's online,
know everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. But that's how all of that works. So that's part of how everybody else knows her, is they have to deal with her on a regular basis as well.
Yes. these are two of the most famous people in town.
Right.
They're kids, but they're in a sense.
I love also watching it the second time.
Yeah.
I love when Everett is teaching her how to use her tape recorder. She's got a new tape recorder. That's a big thing, right? She has a new tape recorder. She didn't want to mess it up, and he's showing her the ropes, and also kind of he gets to show off like I'm a tech guy and that kind of thing. Because we begin with him. All of the sound stuff is great. Because we begin with him delivering a tape recorder.
Yes.
Because a bunch of electrical stuff has happened. Hey, I've got a portable tape recorder. I'm going to loan you. And what's funny is when he's teaching her that, because he's this celebrity in town, there's all the younger girls who are just kind of hanging out looking at him.
Yes.
And he's not and it's great because also he's not a jock.
Right.
And he's also, and he admits later, he's not a popular guy with women because even if they like him, eventually he's that kind of AV nerd who pushes people away.
Yeah.
Or just enough ego as well, probably. But I thought that was really interesting. Like the way that they show you how everybody in the town deals with everybody you could take a masterclass just on that.
Well, and Jason pointed out that you don't even see their faces really until way late in the movie.
Until about half an hour in.
Yeah.
You talk about like the reality, how this paints the reality of a small town. I should have said, by the way, when we were talking about it during the intro, I should have said basketball game. It's a basketball game. But the fact that literally everybody is there, and there is a restaurant that is going to open up for an extra hour during the night after this basketball game, like all of that stuff really rings true. Like it does not feel fake, and that's why it was like, even though this movie has like exquisite period detail, and it's not that sort of exaggerated 1950s, which I also enjoy. Like if you look at like a movie like Little Shop of Horrors or Crybaby
or something,
they have like this sort of like over the top version of the 1950s, and that's fun. I don't actually have a problem with that. I think that there's enjoyment that to be had out of that. But this is a very naturalistic, I'm going to keep going back to that a lot, version of that. But again, there's also this timelessness to it, because like these characters feel like, by the end of this movie, like they feel like people that even when they do cute stuff, like, which normally I would kind of roll my eyes at, like there's like the point where they're talking about science and like all of these inventions that Faye keeps bringing up are stuff that we actually know has come to pass.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
I still enjoyed it, because like that's something in any other movie I probably would just roll my eyes at, but like because these characters are so well drawn, I give it a pass.
Well, also, I think it's great,
the clamshell mobile phone. Go ahead. Yeah.
I think it's also great that she has such an interest in all of this, and none of it all feels earnest. None of it feels over the top, but also we get the small town thing where she goes, hey, I can't go to college. I'll probably just operate a bigger switchboard, which is both the truth and the tragedy of small town life and small town life for women of the time. My mom and I have talked several times. My grandmother went to college, but then she went to home ec, but her real interest was chemistry, and she did really well evidently in chemistry. And she often talked about, I met somebody, but it wasn't your grandfather, but like I had this interest in my mom. What would life have been like that? My mom always thought it was not, hey mom, that's not the part that would have changed your life. Had you gone into chemistry, would have been the like, whoa, what, that's the difference. That's the change, right? But it just wasn't done. It didn't seem like an option at the time for her. And to kind of get that small town way where she's, and their dialogue together where she's like, hey, and the trope of, hey, I'm going to show you how to do an interview, talk about these things, that leads us to that. And it is on the nose cute, but it's done so well, but it still rings true because you have a lot of people. It's mirrored in the guy who phones in who says, hey, I'm black. Is that going to be a thing?
Yeah.
They had us do these things because of our color, because no one will believe us and everything like that.
And kudos to them for actually addressing that, because like a lot of movies set in I've seen a lot of movies and TV shows that use the 40s and 50s and they gloss over any like racial tension or anything like that. And I find that again kind of lazy, like, so I the fact
Sure.
that movie took a moment to inject some reality into this was amazing.
Well, in my, I think I mentioned it before, my grandfather, where I lived in, where I would stay in Hernan, which was the other small town, which was closer to this. And in fact, I mean, there's plenty of places in Texas that you drive through that are still pretty much this town with some modernized, a lot of the restaurants and chain restaurants look new, but the main streets look a lot like this still.
Oh yeah.
Like right now. Like you can drive through it, and that's why they picked this town was because it still looks like this. But in Hearn, across the tracks was really true. Like literally, you cross the tracks, you were in an area that was extremely segregated, and that's the way the town still was. This is 80s, 90s still, and people, for better or worse, people were treated differently. This was a whole thing. Like you can see the difference in the way the town is divided and everything. And this is still when I was there, like I said, 80s, 90s, still a thing. And so watching it the second time as well, with everything that's going on now, a lot of things hit home even more than when I first saw it in September. But I thought, all of that stuff is both, it's brought up and it's so seamless. I'm envious. I'm kind of envious of this director's skill and the writers and director's skill, because how all this stuff it rings true in so many ways, and it seems so effortless.
I agree.
Well, and not just the writer and director, but the actors. Sierra McCormick is just basically she was doing all this on her own. Like they didn't have the sound, they didn't have anything. She was just told, just here, and there was like some AD reading some boring lines, but or not boring lines, but reading them in a boring tone. And she just had to go, like just go. So I think by herself,
right,
kind of as a one-woman show, she was kind of amazing.
She's great.
She has so much emotion.
Absolutely.
Like at first she's really calm, and then she's kind of like excited to be on this like explore figuring this out, and then she's just kind of freaking out, and it's just amazing. It was such a great journey to
there's also a delightful kind of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys sort of style to it for a long time, until it starts to get really dangerous feeling towards the very end. But up until that moment, she's kind of thrilled to be looking into all this stuff.
She's excited once they decide they're going to go and they're as I was saying, they play the sound, they ask for anybody to call in. A guy calls in and a lady call in, both with information. So a guy calls in, says, this is a sound that we heard back when I was in the military, and bad stuff happened. And then this other lady
I was burying UFOs. Short version, I was burying UFOs for the Army. Yeah.
Right. And then this other lady calls and goes, I have more information, but you'll have to come to my house. So they go to her house, and she's like, yeah, totally UFOs. One of them took my son. And then and then they go and find some recordings from when the guy was in the in the military.
So great, yes.
It's just kind of fun because they find reasons to run around town.
But all of this
even though she's supposed to be at the switchboard.
All of this is presented as though we've never heard of such a thing before. That's the other thing that I love, is it's so brazen that it talks about, lights in the sky or sounds from up there and all this stuff, and there's something in the sky. All of that is presented with such, it's not self-aware. It's not genre-aware. It's completely innocent of whatever is going to come in the next 60 years after this. So, they've never heard that before. There's sounds coming from the sky, and there's the Army burying weird things. All of this is stuff that's familiar to us because we've been watching the X-Files and everything else. But to them, it's all new. And you can just kind of get into the real sense of mystery that you would actually have if you were in 1959 and there was no X-Files or anything like that. So I don't know. I loved it. Go ahead.
I also love her glee when she has to go on an adventure.
Yes.
You don't twist my arm to break into the library and take the tapes.
Right.
Yeah, I know. It's great.
Yeah, she was excited.
They're stealing cars.
And the guy's, I stole a bike. And she's so like,
excited.
Nothing ever happens in these towns, right?
Yeah.
Not in general. I mean, look, a good example is my mom's cousin was transporting an ambulance and had to drive it from point A to point B. I think he was, probably delivering it to Texas. I can't remember. Or Oklahoma, maybe. He stayed at our house because he wanted to see my mom. And, it's this brand new ambulance at the time. And he drove around, he turned on the lights, read the siren. We're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, if you look up Salem, Mississippi. Yeah, I had a friend, use Google Maps, and she was like, holy crap, I lived in nowhere. You lived in really nowhere. So if you look up Tylertown, Mississippi, and then Salem. So we drive around and we come back, and our phone rings off the hook. We may have even had, put it this way, we may have even still had a party line. For anybody who doesn't know, it's where you had to, several houses were on the same circuit.
Yeah.
And we ended up in that house only having one, so we didn't have to memorize. In our previous house, you had to memorize your ring, because if you picked it up, somebody else, and even if you didn't hear a ring, as long as your phone was off, the other you could hear everything on that same circuit. Because one time I left the phone off, and then I heard, "Hey, hang off the phone!" Because the guy down the road from our first house, was really angry. He was the coach at our school, and the phone was off the hook, but we didn't know, so he could hear everything in our house, and we didn't care.
How interesting.
But anyway,
no, yeah, that's the party line. Yeah.
You had to live, the more modern or less populated the area, the less likely you were to be on the same circuit with several people. So we had our own circuit in this house. But yeah, people, are you okay? What's going on? Who got hurt? What's the deal? And we had to, for the night, until the gossip ran its course again.
Right.
We basically had to go, no, look, it's an ambulance. And yeah, but the fact that there was an ambulance and it ran, we ran it for probably not even a 1/10 of a mile, right? Like,
do you know what kids used to do? I'm sorry, go ahead. Continue. Yeah.
But it was just, that's how these things work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, luckily, again, that doesn't help your anxiety really about the switchboard, but luckily, again, everybody, they make sure everybody's at the basketball game, which also happens, by the way. I mean, I used to go, I'm not a sports fan at all. I was in band, but I used to go to the games because what the hell else are you going to do? That's the only way to interact with people.
Absolutely. Like, I do the same thing. I would go to the games, but we would end up spending the whole time like behind the bleachers, just hanging out with like the other weirdo kids.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do. Yeah. That's the social event in your town. That's so, like, if you're going to see your friends and hang out with your friends, that's what you do.
I was thinking about the various towns I lived in when I was in high school. And in Waco, what the kids would do is you would cruise the drag on weekend nights if there wasn't a football game.
Mm-hmm.
Cruise the drag means that you would get in a car and you would I can't believe this. You get in a car and you would drive up and down the main street, the main drag. Occasionally stop in one of the large parking lots to hang out with other teenagers, whatever, smoke cigarettes, get back, cruise the drag some more. That was what you did with the evening. And yeah. And this is very much that. This is like totally small towns be crazy, man. That was amazing. Anyway, the funny thing is I'm so in love with how well this movie does all that stuff that, to be honest with you, I could take or leave the frame device. I'm not offended by it. I just don't think it's necessary. I don't understand why they bother. I really literally don't understand why they bother. In other words, I don't think it adds anything to it to say, hey, you're actually watching an old episode of the
Twilight Zone stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I don't think, you watch American Graffiti or Porky's, it's not necessary to go, hey, here's Porky's, the strangest episode of Outer Limits ever. I mean, it takes place in 1963. It's fine. I mean, what do you...
choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a choice, and I thought it was interesting, but yeah, I could take it or leave it as well. I think it's cool, though.
My response to that is, I think my only issue is that it starts with that, but they do nothing. Like, this movie has a completely different look and feel to it than the Twilight Zone. Like, if they had tried to make it appear like an episode of the Twilight Zone, I think I probably would have felt like that stuff was more necessary. I mean, it's a nice little nod to what was obviously and influence, but I kind of agree with you that it doesn't really add anything.
Yeah, and I
they
feel
do
bad
bring
actually
back the
picking on
look
it.
several times.
That's true. No,
You
for
know.
transitions and just brief moments. But the difficulty is it's so impossible to, unless they're trying to look like one of the rare ultra high def, and this is a real thing, but the rare high def year of the Twilight Zone where they shot on videotape and everything was extra crisp, like where the Art Carney played Santa. That's what it looks like, but those are nobody's favorite episodes. So I mean, I'm not crazy about that, but that's okay. You know, whatever. If the guy were standing right here, I certainly would not say that because it would be insulting. And he's made a brilliant movie. I've never done this, so I almost feel bad even bringing it up. But what I was really thinking was, I love this story so much that I don't really need the plot, but there's a plot. So yeah, they're chasing down this mystery. And then it starts to get super scary because they figure out that whatever has been sending messages periodically is probably still in the sky tonight, because they get a theory that it hangs out during games. Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
No, it wasn't me. It was
what's even scarier is, so once the woman calls and they have to go visit her, and she's saying things in an alien language, we find out, or basically an alien spell, as you know.
Yeah, she's chanting something, and I was going, "She's a witch," and then she goes, "I'm not a witch."
Yeah,
okay,
it's great, but
she heard you, Julia.
Again,
yeah,
exactly.
A few months later, seeing this, where she says, "Oh man, I hope you watch the movie before you're listening to this. So spoilers, stop now if you haven't seen the movie. Please do, because I really want people to watch it." But where she goes, "I think that they're controlling things. I think that they're causing chaos. I think that they're pitting people against each other. All of these things." Again, it feels like it's been 3 years, to be honest, since September, since I saw this. But seeing it, watching it, and having that unfold, where the aliens aren't just slightly changing things, or they're not just appearing just because they appear. It's not like Close Encounters where they show up and they leave, and they show up and they leave, and maybe they take some people with them. But they're actively causing chaos throughout the world. And they're controlling people to be hard in their hearts, or to promote wars, or to become divisive, and all these things, and all this chaos.
And speak through people.
Wow.
Like she said that they actually spoke through her infant child. Her infant child couldn't speak, but was able to speak in this alien tongue. It was super weird.
Well, and it's worth knowing that they're malevolent. I mean, or at least they don't mean us to make any progress, because they're out to cause the Earth to slow down by going to war against as far as we can tell, they're out to screw us up. So they're kind of alien invaders, except for they're really just out to jack with us, which is strange and interesting.
So it's a little bit of Monsters Are Due on Maple Street in some ways.
Yeah, well said. But yeah, that's right.
But in a more, whereas that's like a microcosm of just how the rumor mill works in a small town. This is a direct force that not only abducts people, but also is willing to just cause chaos and divisiveness throughout humanity. And I still wonder sometimes if they're not kind of getting at that her lover that she had a kid with had some interference with the aliens, and why her kid was so strange, like you can read it a bunch of different ways, and I love the fact that you can, but I found, that's fascinating. Watching it last night was after watching the chaos that that we can fill our minds with and faces with. It's appalling all throughout, as long as you want to, 24/7 if you want to. I don't recommend that, by the way.
Yeah, me neither.
But going through that part of the movie when I saw it again was kind of mind-blowing, and wow. And of course the filmmakers couldn't have predicted any of this as well. I bet when they're watching it, they watch it back, they're going, oof, somehow it struck home a little bit more than when I even first saw it. And I thought it was an interesting theory and part of the fiction at that time as well.
And it's totally real, because later on, when we find out that Everett recorded her talking and he plays it, it has basically the chanting that she does is a way. Okay, this is my theory, but the chanting that she does is a human vocal way to reproduce whatever effects the alien sound that they periodically play does, because when she chants, it sets off the sound. And that, by the way, is a super scary scene, because they're in the car, and as soon as it does it, it knocks out the two people in the front of the car.
So
anytime anybody hears it, they immediately close their eyes and look at the sky, and so that's what happens with the guy driving the car, but not with our main characters.
One thing I found interesting, my theory from the way it's played out is that it has to be in conjunction with when the aliens are around.
Yes.
Because when she's saying it, they're not affected.
That's right. That's true.
Only some people are affected, and at a time when the aliens are around. So the combo of that is how they're controlling people. But yeah,
and
that's
they only
super
are
scary
around when
in the
there's
car.
not a lot of people. They don't like to be around a lot of people.
Right.
So that's why they target when there's a big
Why
game.
In the small towns? Isn't that great? Mm-hmm. I mean, what a groovy way of saying, why did this happen in Roswell? Why did this happen in this other little town? And they've built it in there. It's great.
Now, my question is, at the end, it would seem they were abducted, but it looked like the recorder was sitting in a pile of ash. So I'm kind of half wondering if they didn't get vaporized.
Oh no, I'm pretty sure they got vaporized.
You think they got vaporized?
Yeah, I'm afraid.
I thought they got abducted, but the abduction happened when they kind of get tractor beamed, and because things were already. Well, the thing is that area was already burnt.
That's true.
In that area.
So you think those are just ashes kicked up?
Yeah.
I don't think they've been vaporized, because that's not. First of all, there's a lot of talk about abduction in this movie, period. And but also, secondly, this isn't that mean-spirited of a movie. I
guess you're right. Wow. Well, thank you guys, because up until this moment, I've thought that they actually get cremated at the end of this movie. So
I just don't think this is the sort of movie that would not only make you fall in love with these two kids, but then also
and the baby,
vaporize a baby. It just doesn't seem to be that.
No, I suppose you're totally right.
Abducted by aliens is dark in its own kind of way, but it's a more fanciful kind of thing than literally their bodies are reduced to ash.
I'm glad that you've given me this thing to believe, because up until this moment, I actually really completely thought that they had been.
Although, if it makes you feel any better, even if they were vaporized, it's only an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Thank God. Yeah.
So you're saying that even in the fiction universe, it's fiction. I mean, even in the universe of the movie, which is fiction, it's fiction.
That is stated, basically.
Yeah, it's stated that it's an episode of a show, so they weren't real in the first place. So, like I've often told my girls,
they are. But...
Well, I mean, I've often told my girls, I'm sorry the imaginary person died. It's which is a horrible thing to say, but it's a way to distance yourself and so forth. I really.
He doesn't tell the girls that. He tells me that, because I'm the one who gets really upset about things.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes, that's true.
I'm sorry. I'll be crying, and
it's
okay.
Julia.
I'm sorry that the fictional person died. Whatever. That's whatever. You're so mean.
I think that it is completely okay to get emotionally attached to the point of crying to fictional characters. And in fact, as a writer, if I were to write something that caused somebody to cry, I would take that as very flattering. And secondly, that is how a lot of works are intended. You don't create something, even though everybody, of course, knows something is fictional. Yeah. You create, you do create something that you hope to evoke some kind of emotional response.
And I'm being ironic usually when I say that, because you're totally right, and I love crying at things myself. I typically commercials, honestly, but I totally
wait, hold up. You were chastising your wife for crying at films, but you cry at commercials?
Yes.
Jason's affected more by, and I'm not kidding about this. This is true. Superhero stuff than he is by dramas, which is really interesting to me. If there's anything with superheroes, then he'll be more affected than if it's regular people.
That is what speaks to him. I mean, I'm not I'm not placing a judgment on that. I'm interested by the commercial things, because first of all, typically commercials are not trying to make you cry, they're trying to make you buy something. But the other thing is about that
also dogs. He's really affected by dogs.
Yeah.
If a dog is really sweet or doesn't or gets injured or something. Yeah.
I have to say,
yeah, animals more than people for me.
Yeah.
Like I watched a movie where this guy killed a turtle recently, and somebody was really attached to it, and I was just like, I was ready to throw shit at the screen.
right? You want to get in the screen and punch that guy. Yeah, exactly. I've often felt that.
Lots of people
Cats,
feel that way when they watch Cannibal Holocaust, Tony. All right.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
well, I wasn't going anywhere near that movie. Meaning, you'll just
no, that's not for me.
It was neat, by the way. This is off the subject, but who cares? It was neat watching the internet literally divide itself along people who were going to go ahead and watch Cannibal Holocaust and people who were like, nope, not going to do it. I'm going to go over here.
Well, they've given you the option on Shudder that if you just want to watch Joe Bob's commentary, they have 45 whatever minutes of Joe Bob commentary that you can watch independently of the film, so you can get the educational experience that is Joe Bob Briggs without the turtle murder.
Yeah, so I'm interested. I just haven't watched it yet. By the way, here's what's weird about this, and maybe this is a dumb thing to say, because maybe I just don't understand the mid-century well enough to know what I'm looking at. But when I was watching this, these kids looked very like early 60s to me. I mean, this seemed to be more like Kennedy era. And I say that also because he talks about Sputnik, which is only like, if it's 1959, that's only 2 years ago. And the guy goes, oh, this was way before Sputnik. And he's talking about the 40s. But if it's 1959, that's just like 10 years ago. 10 years ago. What is this? 2020? 10 years ago is 2010. I mean, that's just like yesterday. So, I mean, I feel like this is more like, it looks more like the 60s. And I also contend that
you're forgetting the main thing is that when you're talking about the late/early part of 2 decades, they always are bleeding into each other. Jason.
True.
I mean, like late 70s, early 80s basically looks the same. Late 80s, early 90s basically looks the same.
So I'm saying that unless
if you look at 1990, like it's still, there's a ton of movies that still are full of shoulder pads and full of everything 80s.
Oh yeah, including the first episode of 90210. But what I'm saying is, therefore, unless there's some reason for me to actually believe it, like maybe Switchboard switched over to be completely different in 1960, and so therefore this is before 1960. This looks more like the early 60s to me. And so I'm just wondering, do we have anything in the text that indicates that it's
funny
59?
that you say that. It's funny that you say that, because in reality, we've all agreed that I can still go to a town that looks like this. And
yes.
So all of that, none of that.
Presumably not with a switchboard, but
to be honest with you, like
my
I mean the look of like
this, Jason.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
but it's funny.
It's
like, oh, this looks like the 60s. It's like it's now, and it still looks like that. Like
that's true.
All of that.
Like that's Jason's family has a farm in a small town as well, and it's
Tony's been there. I mean, so Tony, you and I were in Oak Mulligan, but the cheerleaders are wearing their like that beehive hairdo that the girl wears. When was the beehive popular? The Twilight Zone goes from 1959 to 1964. Let's see when beehive haircuts were popularity.
Hairstyles. No, it's not really a
by
haircut.
the way, my grandmother still had that until she passed, which was in the 80s.
Yeah,
so
the
again,
late 50s. It's the late 50s, Jason. But yes, but we're talking about the young people. So yeah, late 50s, not necessarily. The thing is, like once you like something, you like it probably forever. At least it's highly likely. That's why so many of the things that we liked as kids have come back now that we've had kids, because they're like, well, all those people that were kids, in the 70s or the 80s. They're going to want to see the stuff that they liked when they were kids for their kids.
Ronnie Spector wore her beehive in the 60s.
Yeah, but it says late 50s is when it started as the popular hairstyle. So we've proven nothing. I'm just saying that it's more likely that this is later than. Well, no, the director says 1958. I mean, that's
the
what
director says it's 1958.
Yes.
So the director says this episode of a show like The Twilight Zone is from before The Twilight Zone.
It doesn't matter. The point is, it takes place in November 1958.
All right,
And
no problem.
You first of all, as your wife has proven, it is completely possible for somebody to have that hairstyle. Secondly, if it's not the actual Twilight Zone, which it's not, it's Paradox Theater.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
it could be that. Like, because as we were just discussing, this is a work of fiction.
Also, that's a dumb thing to think about. You're totally right. You're right.
I didn't say it was dumb because
He didn't
I know
say it was
plenty of-
dumb, Jason. He didn't say.
Okay,
that
all
it was
right.
dumb.
No.
I said it was wrong.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say anything because again, I've told you, there's a couple of movies that got the 80s so wrong to me that I had a hard time with the movies because
Right.
that's where I grew up.
Same.
And so
Although
I
it's a
get
little
it.
bit
feel that way
different. It's a
about
little
this.
bit different. You were alive during the 80s. It's a little bit different when we're talking about a time
Right.
period that you
But
did
that's-
not personally
Yeah.
experience.
That's correct.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm the same. It's like, and if something does get it right, then you're just so in love with it because you're like, this is exactly what it was like.
I agree. This is probably a rock solid, perfect representation of the 50s. The only thing that I'm saying throws me off and makes me wish that it were more like 1963 or 4 or 5 is the way they talk about the 40s as though they were 40 years ago, when it's actually more like 10, and that just seems strange for the sort of mysterious.
But here's the difference, Jason. Remember this, and I think it's a cool thing in the writing. 10 years ago to young people is totally different.
It's true.
Than 10 years to older people.
Well said. Yes.
It's vast. I mean, the fact that we're so ancient, Jason, all of us on this podcast. We're ancient to your kids.
I'm getting better with age.
True.
I mean, I've had people. Well, you guys have actually said, "Hey, Tony stopped at some point. Look, he's a vampire." But what I'm saying is, that span makes so much difference at that time.
True.
That when he goes, "Hey, this is," he says, "Oh, yeah, it's before Sputnik." But to them, like, whoa, before Sputnik, that might as well have been the Stone Age.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
in that period of your youth, because if you're 17, 10 years you were 7, and that's like, you can't possibly conceive yourself being 7.
Yeah.
You were a baby at the time.
Yeah.
Whereas you live long enough, 10 years ago. Yeah. I mean, I'm listening today. I found some tapes of this friend of mine's demo. From, 92. It was like, holy crap, I have a tape of a band, and I don't think my friend had this demo. It was recorded like in their practice space. I happened to record it at the time. I find this thing, and I'm amazed at the nostalgia of listening to some of these tapes where I know where the dropouts are. By the way, I'm still holding that cassettes are a terrible medium, even though I'm enjoying listening back. Like,
sure.
The shudderiness and age of a tape is something else.
Tony, do you remember about...
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
About 25 years ago, or 26 or so.
So long ago.
I accidentally left a message on your answering machine one morning. I think it was just like a...
I remember this.
A butt dial.
It was a butt dial. It was. And I was talking to, I guess I was talking to Julia, because who the hell else was I talking? And I said something like... all Tony hears is just crackle,
I'm
crackle.
as vain as the day is long, is what you said.
Yes,
that is one of my favorite Jason quotes of all time. You know me, I'm as vain as the day is long.
Which makes about as much sense as bread so good it hurts the roof of your mouth, which is what you were quoted in
such a sagely, almost nostalgic. I'm telling this story, Julia. But the fact is, you talking to Julia, who has known you for years, and you're expounding. I wish I had all of the context, but you're expounding up on a, and I'm as vain as the day is long, in this wistful sort of way.
My point is, I would love to have that recording. Mainly out of vanity,
but
also just out of just history. Oh my God, wouldn't it be cool if you could find all of your recordings that you left on any medium from 20 years ago, or just the lost stuff. And I'm sure a lot of it you're damn happy that it's lost. But
right.
like,
Well,
gosh,
my whole thing, and again, it kind of, I know it may seem, again, this is a Hangout episode, so whatever. But the way that they, they're on reel cassettes, in the movie.
Yeah.
But it rang home because what started this whole thing is I had recorded a song for my grandfather while he was in hospice, basically home hospice. So he was, dying of stomach cancer, and I had recorded this song, and I couldn't find it. I eventually have found it now, and I don't know if I'm going to do. I don't know if it's good enough for me to revamp it or not. But in amongst this, I started searching through all these tapes, and again, these are tapes from I would say 89 or 90 to 95 or 96. I moved here in 96, so the most of these tapes, some of them I've kind of put aside. I know which ones are from 96 because by then I started to be able to buy more CDs. So I wasn't recording as much stuff on tape, and there's tons of stuff where I was too poor to buy a lot of cassettes, and so you would dupe them from friends.
Sure.
I had a dual cassette player, which was something else. But what has the medium of tape is so fascinating, going from reel to reel to cassette. And the fact that when I play some of these, I remember where the dropouts are. I had a bunch of stuff I recorded off of radio. Where I didn't have that cassette and they were debuting it, and a couple times it's a promo that isn't even out released yet, right? Like, hey, we're going to debut this new song, or it was so new that I hadn't been able to go anywhere because I grew up in a tiny ass place to actually get this cassette or get this album, which I guess then it was cassettes. But my brain knows exactly as it's playing, like, oh yeah, that's where I hear and then like a Paula Abdul song or something. I don't know who. Yeah, I forgot who it actually is, but basically some pop station comes in. But here I am, this many years removed from 1990, 30 years now. Holy crap, I am ancient. But knowing, like, my brain a laser focus into, I know when that's going to drop out next because I listened to this over and over and over.
Yeah.
Growing up, because that was how I heard these songs. It's crazy, but it's also still one of those things where cassettes now made a comeback as a kind of neat way to release something. And I want to go, are you crazy? These are not good. I'm glad I have these, but when I listen to when you press play and it takes a minute to kind of stretch the tape and fully rev up, and it's really warbly, like, we just did that.
It's not a medium that anybody should be. Well, I mean, look, there were great things about that medium, which is it was cheap, right? It was a good way to, and it was kind of revolutionary. The Bow Wow Wow did their song C30, C60, C90 Go. And it was all about how you could carry your music around and like record it off the radio.
That was the thing. Yeah. But that was the thing is, and it's also interesting for him, for Everett. He's plugged in so that he can control what, he can actually record the guy's voice who calls in.
Yeah.
And he's in control of this media. He's at the forefront of technology in this town, pretty much. Both of them are, actually, because she operates the switchboard, which is the forefront of a lot of technology in the town.
She didn't.
The fact that he knows more about when they go into the when he goes to help them talk about electricity and how the tapes are supposed to be, and the guy asks him, "Hey, so isn't this going to be crosstalk? 'Cause that's a new thing he's learned." And you can see Everett goes, "Oh, you know about crosstalk? And he knows the guy is just kind of parroting things or trying to learn.
Sure.
And he kind of has this sardonic, like, "Oh, really? And then, don't worry about it, man." But seeing people and their discussion later about when Faye is saying, "Hey, can you imagine when we have all this new stuff?"
Yeah.
And all of that stuff, again, is what hits home to me, as I'm both a technology person, have to be that at my job, but also it's fascinating to see this cross section of history. And even though that stuff's on the nose, it's still what Drew picked up on. It doesn't feel like a lot of people would do it more on the nose and more ham-fistedly. It does feel like, hey, here's a thing from Popular Mechanics that they would project. Because the tube thing, by the way, is, if I remember correctly, somebody else was talking this even recently, like, the vacuum tube subway thing just isn't really feasible,
right.
even though we thought it would be.
The pneumatic tube. Well, it worked for banks,
Yeah.
and so there was this idea if it works for banks, then
Sure.
it could work for a train the size of a bus. Yeah.
But it doesn't really. The scale of it doesn't skate with that.
Right.
Without a lot of more technology that we'd have to do. I mean, if you were going to do it, you would do it mag rail right now anyway, because that's a way better way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was one of the things in Ghostbusters 2. Do you remember that, where supposedly they stumble across the quote unquote old pneumatic subway?
Yeah.
Which is and I actually know nothing about it. I don't know if this is
Have
completely.
I seen Ghostbusters 2? Do I remember Ghostbusters 2? Is that a thing?
That's yeah. I mean, I think this is the first time I've ever cited Ghostbusters 2. But no, that's not true, because Vigo, the Destroyer, or whatever he's called.
Vigo.
True. Yeah.
Vigo. To him, we are like the buzzing of flies.
Well, he showed up in The Prince of Darkness.
He did.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, no, Prince of Darkness in the Mouth of Madness.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Right.
Mouth of Madness. Yeah, that's right.
And of course, currently the River of Slime is in Russia, so we better hope Vladimir Putin calls the Ghostbusters. Sweet care of that.
So I think that's gotten us about to our final thoughts on the film. Unless anybody wanted to talk about the appearance of the aliens at the end. It looked fine to me.
Aliens? We saw the ship.
Of the ship. But can I ask a dumb question? Everybody talks about micro budget, but to be honest, this giant ship looks fine. It looks fine.
Great, yeah.
What? I mean,
I think that's why they talk about micro budget.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
What he said. Yeah. Like they call it micro budget
because
isn't to say an insult that it's to say that this was low budget and hey, look what these people pulled off visually that a lot of big studios can't do with millions of dollars.
True. Good point.
And that's the fascination. It's kind of sometimes it feels like a little bit of a slight because it feels like, but most people are just, holy crap. And it is a tiny bit of a slight by people who are given millions and can't make things look, because they go, oh, look what they did. But what they really mean is, damn it.
Yeah.
I had all that money and I couldn't make it look like that.
Yeah.
I would have actually been fine without ever seeing this ship. And that's
Yeah,
not a
I
knock
didn't-
to
I didn't
them
need
deciding
the
to
ship.
have that, but in some ways, I almost wish it didn't, even though it's a beautiful shot. And it
Yeah.
looks fantastic. It's well blended. Like it's all the things that you do right when you have the ability to do it, and it's fantastic. But again, you're talking to the person who, every time I watch the silent film, when I watch Faust and see like the demon superimposed thing and all of the effects in that, I kind of, and having, made stuff myself, I am not the person to say it's not hard. But when you imagine that was done in the 20s?
Yes.
Like it seems like there's no excuse for bad effects in some ways, given all the technology. And I know it's more complicated than that, right? Like I get
it's all relative too. I mean, because
when you,
it just depends. Like there are certain things, like certain animated computer animated Christmas specials that were created at the sort of dawn of computer animation that are so hideous to look at that it's just unpleasant. There's
right.
But that's rare. I mean, generally, because I learned from the girls, and they were always like, well, I know what it's supposed to be, and that's good enough for me. It's supposed to, like that's a spaceship, that's a skeleton. I get it.
That goes back to what a lot of people have. I've seen interviews, and I've seen not only papers but interviews. A lot of times we'll see something specifically from Japan where it may look dated or it may not look quite right, and time again, the audience agrees with your daughters, and they go, yeah, I know it's not real.
Yeah.
So why are you hung up on it? But there's a difference in perception.
Yeah.
At some point, most Western audiences went, oh, I see the wires. That's fake.
Yeah.
Right, but I think, I think it depends on what they're, because wires, I do think are kind of unforgivable unless it's something that is, just like like a school project or whatever. But I think what happens is if something looks expensive, but then there is one thing that looks bad, that stands out like sore thumb. Whereas if the whole thing is low budget and you don't expect anything from it, then I think I don't expect to see wires or boom mics, but otherwise I'm going to be pretty forgiving.
Oh, well, if something's done really well, and I deal with this all the time in animation. If something's done really well in one section and not as well in another, consistency is the key.
Yeah.
And that the thing that's not done well will stick out like nobody's business. It's
right.
And it'll drive, I'm sure, it'll drive somebody, a director or a VFX supervisor, crazy, because everybody knows that that's wrong, and sometimes you just have to ship it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole thing where the better you make it look, where if one thing just shines and the rest of it doesn't, it's gonna make everything else look worse.
Yeah.
And it's weird because you think we could just go, oh, look, that thing was really cool, but that's not how most people's brains work.
I think it's fair to say, I'm susceptible to that as well. I mean, I think that's true because I'm not going to pretend that I'm above that. I have the same feeling, like how weird that this whole movie seems like a pretty reasonably realistic or unrealistic James Bond movie, but then suddenly the CG surfing looks crazily shoddy, and you're like, what? Why?
Right.
Why is this happening? But again, I enjoyed this movie so much that I was fine with the ending. I was like, this is the kind of movie it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not just. It's not. Because again, Diner exists. Diner, they literally do nothing but wander around this same time period roughly and have conversations. And same thing with American Graffiti. So this is a science fiction movie. I really dug it. Well, I just said all that stuff, and now for our final thoughts, I probably have nothing else to say because I've kind of like said everything that could be said. But Tony, you went first. Is there, now that we've completely spoiled the movie, if somebody happened to listen to this, and I really hope that they don't, unless they just want to be spoiled for it. But final thoughts, anything at all?
No. Well, I hope that people stopped when I told them to.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, and thanks for sticking with us. I'm so happy that more people can see this movie. I think it's done masterfully. I want to see what these filmmakers do in the future. It works on so many levels. It captures so naturalistically. And this is also coming from somebody like, I don't really want to go back to that small town. Especially in Mississippi. I visit there. I have friends there, and I don't mean that to be offensive, but the circumstances of how things are and how out of place I felt there, my own personal experiences are why. I wasn't made for that place. And I still have friends in that area and everything, but it stuck with me how true everything is. And it can be really hard to do that in fiction. But to reach that level of naturalism and also be a suspenseful sci-fi movie, and also do all these tricks that some people are going to like and some people aren't, like, listening for an extended period of time where there's basically almost nothing on the screen, is not for everyone, right? But I think the things that other parts that it gets so right are so amazing that I hope that everybody enjoys this. I mean, it's up to you. I don't want to overhype it, but I hope that everybody enjoys it as much as I did, because I think it's very masterful.
Thank you very much, Julia. This has been fun. Final thoughts.
No, I thought it was really fun as well. I was really, like I said, I was really impressed by the performance, especially by McCormick, but by everybody's performances. And I did think there was some neat camera work, very suspenseful. I have nothing bad to say about it, except for the fact that she should not have left the switchboard unattended, in my opinion. No, I'm kidding. No, it was great. Really fun. What were you saying?
That's the difference. Time for an adventure.
Yes.
That's the difference.
That was very cool.
Monsieur Drew.
I will be doing nothing but echoing this movie's praises. I think it's extremely well made, and the only thing that kind of makes I'm glad that Amazon picked it up, but the only thing that kind of makes me a little bit sad is that I wish that this movie would have a chance to. It's great that it's playing in drive-ins. I wish it would have a chance to play in in more theaters because it's a very beautiful movie. So it does deserve to be seen on the big screen. But that's not the world we live in right now. So I'm glad that there is a way to see this movie. And just, I am somebody that even though I also never felt like I fit in my small town, I also don't always feel like I fit in the big city. So like there is, when I see something like this that plays up some of the things that I occasionally do get nostalgic about small towns, like I really latch on to about it. And like there was just like in the shots of the kids running around these like half empty, not even half empty, fully empty streets at night, that really took me back to time and place in my own life, and that was wonderful. So I think this is a wonderful movie, and again, a movie that rewards repeat viewing. So I almost recommend doing what I did and watching it once just to listen to the dialogue, which is beautifully written, and then watching it again for all the science fiction ideas.
I think that's super fair, and I agree. The dialogue is just beautiful here. I think if anybody had a complaint about this movie, that I just can't envision it. I think it's one of those movies that I like so much that if somebody didn't like it, I'd be like, oh, go watch it again, come back and tell me again, and which is totally not fair, because what we like is totally personal, but still. I really just adored it, especially all the language at the beginning. The whole sequence in the first half hour where they're wandering around is fabulous. And it's, again, masterclass. I feel like I can learn a lot from it. So there we go. So I guess that now means that we should, if there's anything to endorse, you don't have to endorse because it's the middle of the week, but if anything's come up that you'd like to discuss, then great. Tony, I don't know. Do you have anything that you'd like to lay on people right now?
Right now, everything I recommend is on Shudder. If you have that service, Scream Queen, about Mark Patton's trials and tribulations of being in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, being a gay actor in that time period. Heartbreaking, heartfelt. That's another one I wish I want to cover. Luckily again, I got to see this on the big screen, and I did luck out to see Vast of Space on the big screen, so I feel fairly lucky. But I recommend Scream Queen. There's a lot to it, and Mark Patton was a very open, very honest person in the Q&As and just kind of wandering around Fantastic Fest. That's another one I've been waiting for more people to be able to see. Scare Package, which I recommended as one of the Chattanooga Film Festival ones. Drew, I think you'll really enjoy Scare Package.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a shout out to that because there's a lot of. Oh, also there's tons of people I know from Austin who are in Scare Package. Seeing the credits and seeing like some random stuff was like, oh yeah. Also for Jason, I think the video store parts of the framing device and Scare Package will really hit home to make me want to pour one out for Vulcan Video.
That sounds cool.
It had a bit. Right. There's some bits in it, but I think it's gory as hell in its practical effects, and it's wondrous in that. But and I think it's got something for gorehounds. It's also a little, it's the whole idea is it's very self-aware. But the framing device is also, I really like, it harkens back to other things, but I thought it was really clever. So Scare Package, and then also
the poster is amazing about
Blood Machine.
Scare Package. Okay.
Oh, it's great. Blood Machines as well. If you, which features the music of Carpenter Brute, which I'm less of a techno-ish kind of person lately, but they do this kind of, John Carpenter-esque stuff that's really cool. They have another video that's basically, they have one called Turbo Killer, which was done by the same people who did Blood Machines. They also have one that's a very Dagon, Innsmouth kind of video. But Blood Machines takes this kind of Turbo Killer video and amps it into basically you could see it as a third heavy metal movie. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful to look at, and it has a lot of the heavy metal magazine vibes. But that was another one that I was blown away. It was a kind of an embarrassment of riches this past time. So Scare Package, Blood Machines, Scream Queen. Those are all high recommendations. I really feel, and they're fairly diverse in what they deliver. So I think you could set your weekend up with those, and you'll get a lot of different things. But especially with Scream Queen, especially is so both devastating, and there's a ray of hope, and a lot of stuff that's coming up in the horror scene, people dealing with different things. Like, I think it really hits that home as well, and how complicated things can be, and also, where we were and where we can go with how we approach humanity and everything in the genre. So that's me.
Beautiful. Thank you very, very much. Julia, I don't know. Do you have anything to endorse? Anything that's happening that you're watching or listening to, or what have you?
Oh gosh,
That's not depressing news.
No, I was gonna say I've just been glued to the news. Actually, the memorial today that they did for Mr. Floyd was amazing. I was just sobbing. I was like crying and crying. But so yeah, that's kind of been my my obsession has just been being glued to not just the news about George Floyd, but also all the events around the country. So no, I don't really have anything to endorse per se.
Okay.
No, that's all. I'll think of something for the weekend maybe.
No worries. Excellent. Mr. Drew.
Well, we were talking about stylized 1950s stories. It's earlier. I have been reading the Betty Page comic books put out by Dynamite Entertainment, written by David Avalon, and there's a lot of different artists on there. But they're a lot of fun. Not for everybody. Like, if you're going into this expecting like something close to like a realistic biographical comic about Betty Page, do not expect that, because the plot of this is that Betty Page's work as a fetish model and a pinup model was just a cover for her being a top secret agent for the American government. So it's basically Betty Page as a James Bond type. And if you can wrap your mind around that and go, okay, I'm all right with this sort of alternate history that they are taking this real person on, it is a lot of fun. Like, the artwork is fun, the writing is fun. It's got a lot of B movies and spy-fi influence to it, and it's been the world has been so relentlessly grim lately. It was nice to just get into something that was like silly and didn't take too much thought. Not that there isn't things that you shouldn't be thinking about right now, which I will get to in a minute. But this was kind of an escape for me. It was just pure escapism. But the flip side of this, something I did for myself the last few days. If you have money, if you're financially able to do this, I want you to do something nice for yourself. First of all, I want you to buy a Blu-ray, buy a comic book, take yourself out to dinner, something. Then I want you to match whatever you spent on that on giving it to something charitable, relating to something to do with the chaos in our country right now. And it can be anything. Like, there's a lot of things that are raising bail money for protesters. There's as I mentioned, there are small businesses that you can give to their GoFundMe's. Find something like that and give money to it, because not everybody can go out or even should go out and protest, given the fact that we are still in a pandemic, or frankly, some people some people have children. Some people just are not in a position where you can do that. But there are still so many ways that you can help out, and these are those ways. So that is my thing that I'm going to tell everybody to do. Pamper yourself, but also give the exact same amount of money or more to something that's socially positive.
Thank you. That's fabulous. I have nothing to add to that. And I'm with Julia. I've been just glued to the news, but I think your advice is really, really good. Adam Foshko, who's often on the show, just sent me a thing about this Sunday. This is from the sublime to the ridiculous. He sent me a thing that this Sunday at noon Pacific, which is 1 o'clock my time and 2 o'clock Tony's time, anyway, there's an online concert of tiki music and a tribute to Exotica's Martin Denny. That's the geekiest thing I've ever heard of, and I definitely want to listen to that. So that's a thing. If I can learn more about it, I'll post about it on the page. So cool. Thank you everybody for being on. Tony, I really liked this recommendation. This was a lot of fun. I'm very glad of it. So you guys have a fantastic.
I'm terrified, by the way, when I do that.
Oh, really?
I'm always terrified. Like, what if I'm the only one who's really, really digging this much? Because I do really enjoy this movie.
Well, I mean, you did good. So congratulations on that.
For what it's worth, I do trust you. If you tell me I'm going to like something.
Yeah. One day, I'm sure it'll backfire on me, but I appreciate
that. You said you wanted me to watch it, so I was like, okay, I'm sure if Tony thinks I'll like it, I'll probably like it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, given how much you like X-Files, I felt like when I saw it in the theater, there's each movie I see, I think of, sometimes they overlap, but I think of the audience for this film, right? And when I came out of this one was, oh yeah, I know who. Oh, by the way, Drew, did Jamie get to watch this with you?
She did not. Alas, she was too busy today to watch it with me, but I did tell her that I think that she would like it. And then when she gets some downtime, she should watch it herself.
Right. Well, I thought, I thought of you guys as well, because I think all of the way it fits together, I just think she would dig it as well.
I know she would like it. I like Jason would have a very hard time wrapping my mind around somebody who did not like this movie.
Right. Exactly. It's hard to imagine. Sometimes you'll run into, somebody who just like, and then you go, well, that's an opportunity for me to sort of be an ambassador to another planet where people don't understand how cool the 50s were. So, all right. Everyone have a fantastic evening. Thank you so much. And I will talk to everybody soon. Bye.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
All right.